Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, A Job Seeker's Guide to Sustainable Careers. My name is Allison France. I'm currently an intern at the Climate Reality Project. We work with ReImagine Jobs to promote sustainable economic development in the southwestern PA region, for those of you that aren't familiar. For some context for this webinar, we recently, as ReImagine Jobs, distributed a survey where we wanted to gain some insight into some of the barriers that job seekers face when trying to tap into the green economy and the workforce. We found that many noted that they would benefit from accessible and guiding resources for technical development, like constructing resumes or learning how to network in a specific sector. So one of the main goals of this webinar is to create an opportunity for current job seekers to gain some context into how to enter the sustainable workforce confidently and with the proper tools under their belts. So I'm going to distribute a toolkit. I'll put it in the chat that we put together. So you'll be able to save this and use it for future reference. We can certainly email it out afterwards, along with any other resources that our speakers will provide. But our toolkit is also available on our website main page at reimaginejobs.org. It provides some insight into crafting a resume and cover letter, things like securing letters of recommendation or mastering your interview skills and getting connected with current programs in the region, all with a big focus on sustainability. So I'm actually going to share my screen just now, and then I'll put it in the chat for you to have as well. But I'll just run through it really quickly so that you know what is available and that you can take a quick look at it. So this is just a quick guide that we put together that talks about who we are and what we do, as well as the available resources in the region. So we highlight some of the ways that sustainability in the workforce is really important and why it should be pursued, as well as some of these more technical skills that you can take a look at any time that you're needing to, if you're preparing and drafting a resume and cover letter, as well as we currently highlight certain sectors that you're able to look at on our website as well. And we also have examples of a resume and a cover letter and like the specific things that you should look to include. Again, you can take a deeper dive into this on your own time. Also talking about letters of recommendation and mastering your interview skills. And then we have a final page with all of these resources that you're able to use that we have available on our website as well, and also on our social media pages, that you can check out our exhibitors and our recent Spotlight series that we did last year, so that you can gain some of these networking resources and sort of tap into what is available in our region. So ultimately, we also want to address what sustainability in the workforce looks like and why it matters for job seekers. So we define at ReImagine Jobs sustainability and sustainable economic development as a shift away from carbon intensive and extractive industries. It's a rapidly expanding sector, and it's really guided by a mission of valuing both people and the environment. And it's really not just limited to jobs in like green technology or solar panel installation. It can also be seen in industries that promote socially equitable pillars in pay and healthcare and diversity and ethical and transparent corporate practices. So for workers, a green economy really means increased career opportunities for all skill sets, and as well as the production of innovation in our region. So really, we hope that this webinar will break down some barriers and notions as to what sustainability in the workforce really looks like, and then why it should also be pursued by people of all skill sets and socioeconomic and educational backgrounds. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. First, we have Chris Gassman from the Pitt Center for Sustainable Business, a leading business strategy collaboration hub at the University of Pittsburgh. He previously worked as the Chief Commercialization Office of a service-disabled veteran-owned small business tackling climate, modern slavery, and innovation. He's a social entrepreneur with a decade of experience across the US, Egypt, Germany, China, and beyond, helping companies thrive. He earned his MBA JD joint degree from Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School of Business and the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. He received his BA from the University of Colorado at Boulder with a double major in international affairs and political science. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. And thank you, ReImagine Jobs, for organizing this. Really wish that I had resources like these when I was starting to find my way or working on the current pivot. So I'll just start off with what got me in or how did I find MySpace. I know Allison teed it up really well. The overarching journey, I think what everyone here is interested in, okay, so how do I do that? Like, what is my takeaway for me, Chris? And one thing that I found that's really resonated with others is this idea of a personally crafted leadership development program. And so when I was coming out of my time in undergrad, I had bachelor's in international affairs and political science, which is great because you can do anything. It's also paralyzing because you can do anything. So what specifically do you go off and do? And thought, all right, let me carve out some time, create some iteration space where I can try out a couple of different things, pressure test, right? Where is that Venn diagram overlap of what I'm passionate about, line up with what I happen to be skilled in, what the market will actually pay me for, and what advances my tribe, i.e. humanity. And coming out of international affairs, the three things that I thought I should pressure test that I thought were going to be key to my role were going to be something geographic, something in regards to different sectors, because I've only really done government work until that point, and then finally something functional. I was just discovering that there was this different idea of different functions doing different things, but hadn't really explored and done more. So with that in mind, thought, all right, we'll take the next 3 to 6 years and go off and try different geographies, different sectors, different functions. And by the end of that, I'll have figured out, here is the career path, here's the thing that I want to focus on, and I'll be green light, go. Or I'll have found that, and there'll be some type of glass ceiling that I'll need some type of skills, network, credentials, what have you, to work through. We need in order to accelerate past that. And so went off with an amazing organization called ISEC, AIESEC. I'll drop that in the chat later. But they helped get me out into doing a stint with the United Nations in Egypt. Then I worked with that organization, helping them open up a country office in Qatar, and also Bahrain and Oman as well. And then finally did a stint with a local company in Shanghai, out in China. So over 3-4 years, got all the different types of experiences that I was really looking for. And by the end of that, I'd really honed in on this opportunity for companies not just to be part of the problem that we were running into, but also part of the solution. Right, that there was this opportunity, there was this way for companies to make money by making the world a better place in a way that was strategically relevant for them, that wasn't just nice to have philanthropy, but was core to their strategy, their purpose, why they existed as a company. And what really caught me, my personal journey, was all around modern slavery and just seeing that in all the different countries that I'd went through. And that being on the more human factor side of things, the mentors that I was looking at really encouraged me, well, Chris, if you want to get in on that, environmental is easier to quantify. And so if you can get it brought in on an environmental project, then you're already going to be working with their books, and it'll be a lot easier for you to participate, to collaborate with companies on that front. I still don't know to this day if that's worked. It depends on how you introduce yourself. So just be mindful of that. That's not a golden key. You got to be thoughtful. But it ultimately, in the long run, it has started to work out. So with that in mind, thinking, okay, I need to go off and hone in on the environmental side. Since I'd done human development before, needed the environmental piece. Also, if I was going to make the business case, I needed to hone in on the C-suite language of dollars. And thought, all right, some type of business degree. And if I ever wanted to work in a UN agency or something else like that, and at a higher level, I'd need some type of doctorate, usually for those higher level positions. And so I thought, all right, where can I find all of that? Did some research and ended up really honing in, landing on at the opportunity with the joint degree between Carnegie Mellon for the MBA and the University of Pittsburgh for the law degree in environmental law, science, and policy. Did that for another 4-year stint, figured out, within there what's specific function, and ultimately landed up on consulting. And over the past 10 years, I've been out, mostly based out of New York City, but working across the US and a little bit internationally as well, helping companies really hone in on how are they working with their people, how are they working with their natural resources, and how are they innovating in ways that really just help move them forward and move all of their stakeholders forward. It's been fun, it's been exciting, and somehow life worked out that I ended up boomeranging back here to University of Pittsburgh, now working at the Center for Sustainable Business. I'm going to turn it back, Allison, to you. I'll leave it there for just as a quick intro, but I'll tee up in advance. In addition to ISEC, I'll also drop in a link to another interview that I did previously. So if folks want to know about career artifacts, happy to talk about those. Those have been supremely helpful for me in my job searching. And then another one that might be helpful for us to talk about along the way would be informational interviews. Again, happy to build out on those. But Allison, without any further ado, back to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. That was great. Yeah, we can definitely share all of those resources if anybody's interested. And also feel free, like Kelly mentioned, to put any of your questions in the chat, and we'll be sure to address those at the end. We also have another speaker, Edgar Largue-Espada from Partner for Work. Edgar is the Director of Industry Strategy at Partner for Work, the $25 million workforce development organization for the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. As such, Edgar leads a team of developers and empowered to engage businesses and other entities to develop and deploy strategic solutions to solve common challenges in talent pipeline development, recruitment, and retention. Prior to this work, Edgar led Partner for Work's efforts to understand the supply side, so studying job seekers and workers looking to begin or advance in a career with a specific focus on job quality, equity, and inclusion. This research has been the topic of several speaking engagements and featured in both regional and national press publications. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Edgar.
Thank you, Allison, and hello, everyone. It's thank you, ReImagine Jobs, for inviting me. So just to, for those who are not familiar with Workforce Board, such as Partner for Work, we exist all over the country. We get assigned a local area, and essentially what we are is the federally recognized entity that serves as a steward of public money that is invested in services for job seekers, for young people, and for adults looking to find meaningful employment, and also provide services to businesses in the area. So as such, we don't provide direct services. What we do is we partner with great, community-based organizations, secondary and post-secondary institutions, higher ed institutions, training providers, businesses, industry associations, and to help kind of keep our pulse on what's happening in the workforce and the labor market, and how we can help folks gain the skills, upskill, to be able to find employment, and also for businesses to continue to find the talent they need to continue to thrive, right? So With that said, we do a lot of research. We try to stay on top of the trends and how they're changing. So, with that in mind, if someone would come to me and ask me, "What about sustainable jobs? How can I break that into that industry, into that sector?" I would say, well, it spans across different sectors, and a key there to really to hone in is to understand how broad and new the field can be, but it's not going anywhere, and it follows the consumer demands and consumer behavior. So businesses will continue to have to adapt to those demands and behaviors of consumers. So the field will continue to grow, it'll continue to refine itself, and it will continue to present a lot of opportunity. So for those who are looking into taking advantage of those opportunities right now and kind of getting on the ground floor, so to speak, there's some areas in which you can start to focus on. Um, and those are, typically around environmental, social, and economic topics for and the related skills for businesses. So when looking at that, there are a few categories of hard skills that we are starting to observe, but the primary thing are soft skills, and particularly we see creativity, adaptability, and design thinking as being very in demand skills. And these apply with and the different categories that we're seeing in terms of skills are engineering, technical skills. So think about information systems, or engineering and architecture, science-based skills like physics and biology, operational management skills as well, and monitoring skills. So when I reference operational management skills, what I mean is understanding how a company or an organization operates, how it creates services or products, and how it delivers them to their consumers. Um, for monitoring, we're talking about policy analysis, evaluation, compliance, data tracking, and legal services. So I go through all those different buckets of hard skills and soft skills to show that at the heart of this is an understanding of how can your expertise, how can your interests align with the needs of these businesses in different industries. So it will require doing a little bit of your own research, and LinkedIn is a great source for this. Going on LinkedIn and understanding what businesses are posting about, what are they interested in, what sort of groups are they following, to give you clues as to where they are in terms of caring or doing sustainable business and sustainable practices. So, and then try to connect with those businesses using LinkedIn. It's a fantastic tool. Look at the past job postings. It'll give you a sense of what positions they're hiring for, what sort of skill sets they're looking for, and based on that, my other recommendation, another great online tool, is the ONET online webpage. So ONET, or SOC codes as well, are used by the Bureau of Labor Statistics to kind of group occupations or job families. And going on that website, it helps you take a deeper look at some of these occupations and some of the skills and how they overlap with others. And so it allows you to kind of chart your own adventure of sorts. So for me, that will be another key tool to use. LinkedIn, or the ONET website, and bring it back to what are your interests, what are your current skill sets, or what skills you would like to acquire in terms of looking for potential training, and what are you able to do right now in terms from a financial standpoint. Can you take some chances? Can you take to take opportunities that maybe when you have other needs, caring for a family, for example, or paying for a house, or other expenses, you might be able to. So it's always good to consider that. What are you able to do right now, from a financial standpoint, or sort of chances and risks you can take to just gain the skills and experiences that will serve you much better in the future. And based on all those things, kind of see where you want to land and where you want to start. So I'll stop there and then happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edgar. That was really helpful and really great to hear you speak. So thank you for joining us. Yeah, and if, as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them later on. Our final speaker of today is Carolyn Matheson from Exis Partners. She is the Human Resources and Administration Manager for Exis. She has over 10 years of experience in the renewable energy sector and 15 years of administrative experience. She got her BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and an MA from the University of Pittsburgh. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Carolyn.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Okay, so I got COVID yesterday, so I might be coughing during my talk. I'm sorry ahead of time, but not a big deal. So I have sort of a lot of similar things to say as Edgar just went over. Personally, I got into the renewable sector by taking my skill set, which at the time was only administrative assistant or executive assistant. But I said to myself that at the time I was working in New York City for a financial firm. And I said to myself that I would really rather be doing something good for the world or useful for the world with sort of a liberal slant. I said at the time, democratic politics and recycling. That was my goal. So I don't work in recycling, but I was able to find at the time a renewable energy company to work for. It was called EverPower, and the company built wind farms across the US. So gradually that job expanded, and now I'm doing human resources for the company, which is also morphed into a new company called Exis Management Partners. But that's all sort of irrelevant. The point of my saying this is that any job, you can almost take, not any job, but you can take a lot of jobs that might not seem like they're going towards sustainability, and you can get involved in the sector, depending on sort of what your values or objectives are. So I'm going to go over some of the different jobs that Exis hires for. Sorry, I still always confuse the two company names, which is pretty absurd. So I'm going to go over our different departments just to give an example of some of the jobs that we hire for. So, and I'm not talking about all forms of energy, by the way. I'm only talking about wind and solar. Other forms of energy would be hydro energy, ocean generated, and also just river energy, offshore wind, and geothermal. But I don't know about those industries. So starting with our construction department, this is I think one of the most accessible fields. It's very important for the construction of utility scale wind and solar farms. And this is the kind of thing where, you might be good at construction and not think that that can be involved with sustainable energy, but it totally can. Our projects require roads to be widened or rebuilt. We require connections to the power grid. So there's a lot of underground power lines being laid and also mapped to make sure that they're not intersecting with other things underground, obviously. The wind towers are sometimes up to 10 stories tall. So that's, if someone is skilled at large scale construction, you could get involved with wind turbine construction. And solar farm construction and solar farms in general are a little more accessible and more available across the country than wind farms, because you can put solar panels almost anywhere. And wind turbines have to be a little more particular where they're placed based on wind patterns. So construction is a really great way to get involved in the field without requiring necessarily an advanced degree, although you could do a degree in civil engineering as well. The second department that we have is our operations department, which is a lot of computer programming, a lot of algorithms, They are remotely monitoring the wind farms. So they're programming the turbines to react to wind conditions, shutting the turbines down depending on adverse wind conditions, which would be if it's too windy, in particular, if there's a storm, we'll lock the blades so that they don't spin off or cause an accident. But it is all remote computer-based programming. And the people who work in that department all have at least a bachelor's degree in computer programming, but more often a master's degree in computer engineering, or also the head of the department has a PhD in, I believe, geography, but is related to wind patterns. So that's that, excuse me. Another department that I think is very available to a variety of skill sets is our development department. And what we mean by that is not business development, but project development. So this process starts with working with landowners and local governments to arrange the deal. If we find a windy location, for example, we've done this in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. The people in this department meet with city leadership and then meet with town councils, with landowners to sort of work out the benefits of the project for the town. A lot of times these will be, a lot of times the projects are built in, well, obviously they're built in rural communities, right? Because they require a lot of land. Sometimes those communities are not doing as well as they used to do because the farms are not producing as much. Industry is shut down, moved away. So the towns are in need of money. So wind projects and solar projects are able to provide tax benefits to the towns that benefit local schools, and also construction projects in the town, like new roads, paving, infrastructure. So there are a lot of benefits for local communities. To get into this, you could study public relations. You could study public policy. This department also handles permitting and environmental permitting and also real estate permitting. So those are two more fields that are applicable for this field. So these are skill sets where, like with public relations, you could go in many different directions. Real estate, you could go in many different directions. It's just a matter of if you're looking to get into renewables, that would be an option. And I think before I go over some more of the specific details, one thing that's important to note is that you need to have a tangible skill and then apply it to the renewable or sustainable sector. It's not enough just to hope for sustainability. So these jobs that I'm trying to mention are, I think, very specific. Another department that we have is the commercial trading department. Those people are most similar to stockbrokers. They tend to have advanced finance degrees, and they trade renewable energy credits. They also do hedging for production prices. Sorry. For solar and wind production. So the output of those projects is sold to the grid. It's a little confusing if you're not aware of it, but they're sold to the grid at certain prices, and the commercial department negotiates that on a daily basis. So very math and finance based. A super important department that people don't really think of in sustainability is accounting. Pretty basic degree requirements. CPA degree would be helpful, and understanding tax benefits and tax laws as they relate to both national policies like the Build Back Better plan, tax credits on national and state levels. And that our department in this case manages projects for our clients. So we're managing, for example, a project for BlackRock. So we take care of their accounting needs for the projects. So we do everything from their bills to landowner payments. And it's more complicated than that. But I think that's a great example of a field you wouldn't necessarily think could be involved in sustainability. So again, it's sort of like what I did, right? It's sort of like you can take a skill that's very applicable, like accounting, and say, I want to be involved in something good for the world. I want to be involved in sustainability, renewable energy. And in that way, people who aren't like energy producing or public policy experts can also be involved in sustainability. And the last department that we have is the finance department, which is similar to accounting, although these people are working out larger scale deals in mergers and acquisitions. So they're working with big companies like KKR, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs even, to work out deals that we would acquire and then manage. One thing that I like to point out, obviously, sort of utility scale energy is big business. And I started my career in nonprofits and sort of hoping to work for USAID. So I didn't want to work for a for-profit company. I thought that was bad, but it isn't bad. And it's a thing to sort of get your mind over if you're looking to only work in like a nonprofit kind of setting. Energy deals are big business. Like Edgar was saying, it's a good way to make enough money to pay for a house, to pay off your student loans, et cetera. Don't be afraid of the private sector working in the energy field. This is just a multi-billion-dollar global effort. So it's definitely not something to shy away from, even if your goal is environmental, which sounds, a bit more local, I think. So these are a bit of rambling thoughts. I hope it's helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'll just wrap up with that.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. That was super helpful. Feel free now. Those were all of our speakers. So thank you all for sharing your information with us and your experiences. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can get going with answering some of them. But I guess we'll start off with this one from Kelly. How have you handled rejection in your personal career journey? And or what recommendations do you have for people who have faced a series of rejections or are struggling to transition into a new career? So I'll open that up to any of the speakers that are willing to answer that one.
I was going to say, I'm sure that Carolyn or Edgar probably have far more refined thoughts on this. To help get the wheel going, happy to start it off. So yeah, Kelly, I think that rejection is one of those things that each of us handles differently, and we're all carrying lots of different baggage with it. I can speak for myself that one time that was hard for me, particularly at the time, and has taken a long trail to get over it, was coming off of that second opportunity that I had helping the organization expand out in Qatar. I had approached that role like I had my last role. So one of those key isms to keep in mind is the skills that got you here are not going to be the skills that got you there. And so I kept treating my team leadership role that I had moved into in that second opportunity as the sales role that I'd had beforehand. And I was not doing well by the team. I was not doing well by the people. And by the end of it, ended up getting invited to be successful elsewhere. And ultimately for the best of the team, for the best of the project, for the best of the impact. At the same time, it was one of those like, oh, you're rejecting me. How? Why? So it's hard not to take it personally, even though it wasn't meant or intended that way. So how I dealt with that was taking some time to just let that process, right? Do other things, connect with family, reconnect with friends, take walks, just let your mind work through things, and reflect over, okay, well, why did that happen? How did that happen? How do I get back up on the horse? And in the next role, the one that I did over in China, because I thought about it, because I tried to reflect on it, because I was more intentional about it going into it the next time around, all of the things on the team management front that I did not get great marks on were 180 the next time around in the next team that I was working with and the next teams that I was helping lead. So give yourself the space and grace, I'd say, is one key aspect of dealing with that kind of personal rejection. And I know this may come across as trite, and so it's not intended that way. And it's not intended that folks who have continue to run into struggles that they're not trying. That's not the intention. Just that there's still likely some match or connection out there that the experimentation hasn't hit on yet. So maybe it's a tweak of the strategy, maybe it's a tweak of the execution. Different folks I've worked with, it's been one or the other, or sometimes a little bit of both. Most folks that I've worked with, they've eventually found their way and they found the thing that they're really passionate about. Sometimes it takes a few years longer than others. So that's a little bit of a rambling way just to say it. At the end of the day, everything will work out on the end. And if it doesn't, it's not yet the end, to quote one of my grandfather's favorite movies.
Allison, yes. If it's okay, I can jump in too. Oh, sure. Oh, sorry, Carolyn, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I think what Chris said is great. Yeah, for a long time, gosh, I was just so sort of embarrassed that the career I wanted wasn't working out, and really sort of disheartened that my dream goals were not happening. And it did work out finally. So that is a huge relief. And to go back to what I said earlier, the reason my intended path didn't work out is because I didn't have the tangible skills that I needed. I had degrees in political science and history and international development, but I wasn't good at economics. I wasn't fluent in the languages in the countries where I wanted to work. And I didn't have tangible work experience that would get me into that field. So that's when I thought about what's important to me. And it was sort of a focus on making the world better, helping the world, and again, that recycling thing, right? So I knew it was something environmental, which led me to the wind energy company I mentioned before. But I just can't mention enough those tangible skills: computer programming, construction, accounting, et cetera. Like I said before, you've got to have that something that you can rely on before you can just pick the sector. So I will let Edgar answer as well.
Thank you. And I think you both have touched on so many great things, so I'll keep it brief. And just to echo some of what has been said already, the first step is to try not to take it as personally. I know it's hard, but it'll just lead you down the wrong path of in my own experience, when this has happened to me, and this was a tough lesson to learn. It was about allowing myself to just feel that emotion, but then kind of going with that to understand the why. And maybe it's because why this experience hurt me, like this rejection, why does it matter to me? It was kind of a natural transition for me. Why am I sad that this didn't pan out for me? Is it because I just wanted a paycheck, or is it because I really wanted a career with this company? And just kind of following that thought process of trying to uncover your why. Because I feel, in my experience, understanding my why I want something, why I wanted that company, why I wanted that particular job, it helps to lead that back into your how. So I know why I want this, and what I can back into what I really want and how I'm going to go about it. So it goes back to your strategy a little bit. And in terms of that strategy, knowing that you don't have to abandon what you're good at. You don't have to abandon what your skill set is. You just kind of have to rethink of how your skill set is being applied in that sector or in that particular role, and how you can use your what you're good at to contribute to that. And that becomes part of your pitch. You got to sell yourself, and I think that becomes part of your pitch. And you use that to kind of filter information, filter opportunities that come your way, and make sure that you are not diluting your efforts by going after too much, but to just honing in and focusing on something that you really, really want, that really connect with your why. So that will be my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was super helpful. Again, feel free to put any questions in the chat. I do have another one that feel free for any of you to address. But I think another part of sustainability is also like pay equity, and ensuring that you are satisfied with what you are being paid, and that'll lead to higher job satisfaction. So I was wondering if any of you could speak to a time maybe when you've had to advocate for yourself in terms of pay equity, or what advice you have for people who are, I guess, grappling between careers where maybe their values are more aligned with the company, but it's less pay versus maybe another corporate-based job that would be more pay, or even if they're already in a job where they may need to demand for a raise or something like that. So I was wondering if any of you could touch on sort of that subject of pay equity and your experiences or advice you've seen from job seekers.
Sure. Since I'm setting people's salary now, I can answer that. Again, personal experience. I was living in Washington, D.C. and New York and not making very much money. And I think if you're not making enough money to survive, you're not going to be able to perform well at work, and you're not going to be very happy, even if the cause is good. So I think it's important to be realistic about the salary level that you need in order to be comfortable. Which is one reason, again, private sector for me personally. So I would say when you're interviewing with the company, you should not hesitate to bring up those questions. You should not hesitate to ask about promotions, what your career steps might be with that organization, if there's a certain set ladder, if it's flexible. At Exis, we do look for employees who are really great in their current position and try to promote them internally. And we also promote people across departments to give them a broader understanding of the energy sector. So for us, we're always open to people looking to do more and looking to learn and grow. So sort of a sense of willingness to learn and willingness to be adaptable. And with, asking for a raise, hopefully your company would have some sort of internal review process, or organization would have some sort of internal review process where that's part of your standard performance. But if not, or if you feel like you deserve more of a raise, it would just be great to have a sort of an outline of what you've done in the past year or the past 6 months and how that has benefited the company or the organization, and point that out to your manager or the CEO, whoever it might be, and just advocate for yourself and sort of say what work you've done and how much you think it could contribute to the company. Maybe it's alleviated work that another colleague has had to do, or eliminated the need to hire a second person, that type of thing. Just try to monetize what your work has done for the company and then ask for that.
Carolyn, that's brilliant. The one build that I'd have on there is to take that even further and flip it around to say what value is currently being left on the table by staying status quo. Like, what value is the company missing out on? Because I know that one way that it's been painful and it's hard and it's annoying to have to make the business case. Like, can't everyone just see the value that I bring, or the value that each of us bring? But to, on top of the work, also create the space to make the business plan. I found that the business plans that I made for advocating for myself were often far more effective if I could talk about, here's the value that we are missing by pursuing status quo. Like, we need to do this in order to capture that value, and putting it really about the value to the firm. Because I know a lot of folks have come to me and talked around, this is what I'm worth, this is the value that I bring. And as much as I get that, the CFO hat is thinking about what is the value to the firm, what is the risk to the firm. And so it's just that slight nuance and that slight twist. So all that to just say plus 100% to what you were talking about, and taking it that extra step of framing it in terms of like, what is the risk to the firm of not doing it?
So just very briefly, because I think both Carolyn and Chris, I think, hit all the right notes. I would just build from my personal experience. I was blindsided when I was negotiating for a new role with a pay increase, because my relationship with my direct supervisor was so good, and I thought he understood and valued what I did. And not saying that he didn't, but I still, when he asked me, why, in terms of why I wanted to negotiate the initial offer, it candidly caught me a little bit by surprise. I didn't think I would have to do that, and I think I was being naive. And I think my advice is, don't be naive. Don't be what I did, and do a little bit of your research of outside of your company or organization, what other roles are there, and what does that compare to. But the main thing is know yourself, know your value, what you contribute, and essentially, what would hurt them to not have someone do what you're doing. Because it could be that they can bring another person in, but they're not necessarily going to do everything that you're doing or exactly the way you're doing it. And your institutional knowledge it's worth a lot of money. It's not the same bringing somebody fresh off the street and trying to onboard them than you already having all those experiences and knowledge in you, and how you can very quickly move and pivot in different directions within that company, because you already have that institutional knowledge within you. And that is incredibly valuable. And just need to work on how to articulate that, how you create a pitch on that. And I think that's a key to unlock a lot of opportunities.
Great, thank you so much. Our next question is from Hadley, more of a question relating to their personal situation, but it notes, having studied at 7 colleges with a BA in communications and now starting a career slightly at the bottom level due to financial limits and disability, do you have recommendations about looking for part-time jobs that can then lead to full-time jobs?
So I would say that a good thing to do, and something that most applicants do not do, is the old-fashioned cover letter. We do most of our recruiting on LinkedIn or using recruiters. We are having a very hard time finding candidates right now in the market. But the people who do bother to send a note with their application or their resume do stand out. It doesn't mean we necessarily hire them, but they do stand out, and I do write back to them because probably 5% of our applicants will do that. So you could see if you see something posted, for example, like with the city of Pittsburgh, you mentioned here, you were talking maybe with President Biden, which is huge, about public transit in Philadelphia. So if you see something posted with like the city of Philadelphia, the city of Pittsburgh, et cetera, I would send a note. Maybe you're not qualified to be the director of communication, but you might be qualified to do that part-time job, to do an internship with them, to do some aspect of their communication, which maybe they're not advertising, but they need. At Exis, we outsource our PR and communications to a company in the UK because we're part of a global partnership, and we have a lot of offices in Europe, so that makes sense for us. But it also wouldn't hurt us to have someone local. So just don't hesitate to sort of initiate the conversation. Worst case, they'll say no. They likely will say no. But if you just are persistent, someone eventually will say yes. So you just have to keep trying. It's not about me, but like back when I was applying for jobs in my original desired sector, I applied for 50 things a day. I mean, you just have to keep going. So I would not hesitate to sort of initiate that on anything you see related to communication and sustainability.
Yes. So to just build off of what Carolyn was saying, because I think the cover letter are a great tool. I particularly dread writing a cover letter. Well, I know that's been my experience, and I think it's shared by many. But I think LinkedIn, again, going back to LinkedIn, I think it's such a great tool that, not many people use to its full potential. And it can be a way to spend some time doing a little bit of research, the type of company, the type of roles they're interested in, and see who has been involved and what those folks are posting about, and try to connect on some of those. Try to find something you can connect on, either something they posted on or an experience that you can think could be shared experiences. But at the end of the day, even if that's not there, a simple note that lowers the stakes of the ask, that you're just looking for some information, that you just want to know more, and that you can potentially add value to the conversation is enough in many cases for someone to just respond back, and maybe that starts a conversation that puts you on a path, not maybe with that company or that person, but somebody else, but you don't know where that path will take you. But it's about kickstarting that path. And so yeah, I think a low risk conversation is hard to reject. And reaching out to folks on LinkedIn to ask for a low risk conversation, I think it's a good strategy to use.
Yeah, building a bit on what both Carol and Edgar just mentioned, and I think I teed this up a little bit in the opening. Through a couple of different programs that I've been through at Carnegie Mellon and other training programs elsewhere, one key resource or one key strategy approach to having those low risk conversations was a specific approach to the informational interview, and that was generally around asking 3 key questions. So one, figuring out and just starting from the place of what's your story, right? You want to get them talking, especially if you can relate it to something that you share in commonality, like, hey, how did you get from being this manager, get to being this manager from starting at the same school or going through the same program that we went to, so that they're building affinity with you. It also helps getting most people talking about their favorite subject themselves. And if you are giving them a platform or an opportunity to talk about themselves, that will help get the endorphins going that they then associate with, chatting with Allison really makes me feel good. I like Allison. She makes me feel good. And so that helps build credibility for you, helps build connection for you, rapport. The next question that you want to really dig in around is what is, it's basically a reverse of a star story, right? What is the time that you've seen someone do the role that I'm interested in, and just this light bulb went off and like, that is why this person is one of our star performers out of this cohort. And you want to ask them about, like, how do they do it? What do they do? That gives you a whole lot more information about the culture of that organization, what's important to them, what's important to that person, to that team. It also, so it gets you a whole lot of information. It also gives them information that while you're not guaranteeing that you're a star performer, that you at least know there's a gradient of performance and that you're interested in being a higher performer. It also likely gives you a name, so that for that third question, you can ask them how, in their experience, how should you follow up with that person? So that at the end of the day, if you're able to replicate this cycle repeatedly with a network of increasing top performers that have been referred to by other top performers, if you build that network up of champions, they're going to be really advocating for you within that industry, within that company, within that function, that team. So that'll help minimize the number of applications that you need to send out there. I've often had more of my success in putting all the time and the effort in trying to get those out there and sending out the fewer applications. Again, at the end of the day, it all works out in the end. So it just depends on different approach. But that's, if I find that just applying is not getting through, then doing these informational conversations can often be more effective. And there are a lot of numbers on how the application process is broken, and that most people come in through referrals. So I would encourage, if you're just starting out, try both and see which way your experience leans it to. But I know we're getting short on time, so Allison, I don't want to keep prattling on about the opportunities in the application system.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are running a little bit short on time. I know Hadley had mentioned, is it worth mentioning volunteering work? So I didn't know if anybody else wanted to speak to that really quickly before we conclude.
It certainly can't hurt, especially if your background doesn't have anything to do with sustainability or the field that you're applying for. It certainly can't hurt. A lot of people do list that on the resumes that I see. So yes.
Great. All right, thank you so much. I want to extend a huge thank you, an expression of gratitude to all of our speakers for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time to share your information and your experiences and all of your wisdom with everybody. So it was really beneficial. So thank you so much. If anybody has any further questions, feel free to message any of us. I can put my email down in the chat. We'll also be sending out resources like the toolkit, as well as any of the additional resources that our speakers have put in the chat. So you'll have those for ready, easy access later on, even after the webinar has closed. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us all today.